Well, folks, as the sun comes up over the city, thanks for joining in to Stockwell Day-to-Day News. Again, as more and more people are joining in every day, as we're giving you a glimpse of what goes on behind some of the big stories that are out there. So let's jump right into it here on Spotify. You know, it's interesting to see the whole issue of freedom of speech, so-called freedom of speech, and how it's being handled today. It's a hugely important issue, and I want to talk about Jimmy Kimmel. We're going to talk about that in the show. We're going to talk about some other things that have just taken place. First of all, let's look in California, where they just passed legislation saying they can fine people up to $500,000. That's $500,000, and perhaps even $1 million if their speech hurts people's feelings. If it's called then by politicians, it can be called hate speech. Hugely dangerous stuff. California, unfortunately, has been the spearhead of some of the most ridiculous and outrageous legislation, excuse me, regarding freedoms, and very disconcerting to see that. But in Canada also, we have a situation where politicians are considering, under the leadership of Prime Minister Carney, ways in which speech can also be labeled as hate. Listen, anytime you have one person given a power to say that another person is speaking something that's hateful, you're going to run into difficulties. And so, excuse me, we're asking people really to freely speak to their politicians about this issue. The freedom to speak should be just that, freedom to speak. Now, obviously, in a very, very extreme circumstances, there's got to be some way to curtail that. But we have courts, we have ways in which people can be sued. There are many remedies. It's not perfect. But what is frightfully imperfect is bringing in these new restrictions on the ability to somebody to speak freely. Awful what's happening in the US, very scary what's happening in Canada with this Human Rights Commission and other groups that are able to just come and say, charge people. Matter of fact, you can be dragged into court not even knowing who your accusers are in terms of the things you say, which can be deemed hateful or harmful or hurtful. Bad direction. We've got to allow freedom to speak, and with all of the sometimes uncomfortableness that comes with that, which brings us really to this Jimmy Kimmel situation. I'll just spend a few minutes on it. It's the talk of the town everywhere, of course. The one thing, and I'm sure people have watched his presentation on his return, give him full credit to be able to return, to be able to have the companies that pay for him, Disney and others, even though his ratings are poor and he was dropping in the ratings, he was brought back. And again, this thing got very political. I've said before, and I said when this first happened with him, that a government agency, and in the US it's called the FCC, should not have the power to regulate what somebody says. There are ways in which that can take care of itself. And very disconcerting to see what was already happening. The people across the country were already making their views known. Let companies decide if they want to keep somebody on, but don't put that in the hands of government, and that's where you get the problems. I give Kimmel some points for acknowledging, and he did seem sincere, that the most amazing thing with the whole horrendous situation about the murder of Charlie Kirk was that Charlie Kirk's widow, his wife, Erica, could look into that camera and say that she forgave the murderer. That was probably one of the events of the century in terms of the human heart being touched by the hand of God. And Jimmy Kimmel acknowledged that, so I give him points for that. But you know what? He did not say anything about, he talked about government controlling him. He didn't say anything about university professors who control what students can think or say. He didn't talk about the universities that kick professors out when they have a different point of view. He didn't talk about what happened during COVID, and there's many different approaches and opinions relative to COVID, but the thousands and thousands of doctors and nurses who got fired, who haven't been rehired because they had a different point of view. He didn't talk about public workers, whether it's firefighters, whether it's people in the military who were healthy and didn't want to take the vax, and they got fired. I'm not even going to get into the whole discussion on where that comes down on the health side, but he didn't talk about students in schools who aren't allowed to speak up because they have a different point of view. Didn't talk about the female students who are not allowed to speak up because they don't like competing against biological men. Those girls, when they speak up about biological men coming into bathrooms and shower rooms, and they're told to shut up, or they're told they won't be allowed to compete. He didn't talk about speaking up for them. So great for Kimmel to talk about speaking up and protecting the rights of people, but it seems to be he's only saying that for people on the left. Hopefully his mind can get broadened somewhat on that particular issue. Folks, for those of you who are following the ostrich farm situation in Canada, those beautiful birds, almost 400 of them that the government wants to kill. Some of the birds died some months ago of avian flu. The rest appear to have developed herd immunity. They're not sick, they're doing well. The government wants them all killed anyway. They brought in the RCMP, they brought in people with hazmat suits. They show pictures of officials in hazmat suits climbing the poles at the farm to take out the security cameras. It's one of the most insane things we've ever seen in Canadian history. The birds are still alive, lots of protesters up there, but the Supreme Court has put a stay, and the question still remains. The people who own the birds are wanting the birds to be tested so it can be proven they're healthy, and the government, the federal Liberal government, is saying, no, we're not going to allow you to test the rest of the birds to see if they're healthy. We just want to kill them. So kind of crazy stuff going on there. In the United Nations, of course, the whole world is talking about Donald Trump and his presentation there. A couple of things. There's tons of stuff being said. I won't linger on that for long. But in terms of free speech, he did present pretty abruptly some different points of view. He said that the climate agenda has gone off the rails and gone crazy. He said that countries allowing wide open immigration across their borders, he says that's not a good idea. So interesting to see how he's getting pilloried for that. And again, these are items which should get proper, respectful debate on both sides. So whether you're talking about a comedian like Jimmy Kimmel, who's allowed just to hit one side of an issue, whether you talk about some of the pontificators out there, and sometimes I guess I would be in that particular category, what we need to see more and more are shows and presentations where there are both sides are being presented on an issue, and then let people decide. A great format I'd encourage networks to think about. If you've got an issue, have one person on each side, give them 30-second mics, so they get, the first presenter gets 30 seconds, speaks, her mic then goes silent, the other person jumps in for 30 seconds, and then her mic or his mic goes silent, and back and forth with 30-second mics, people able to make their points, pick the timeline on how long you want it to go, but let people have a chance to hear or see both sides of an issue. And Trump, for whatever reason, many reasons people don't like his presentation, he's presenting two sides of an issue. He's presenting that on climate, he's presenting that on immigration, and it's time we were mature enough and got over our hard feelings enough that we were able to talk about these things intelligently, because these are huge issues and other parties deserve to have a say. In Canada, one of the beautiful northern ports is at a place called Churchill, way up in the frozen north, as they say, and the government is spending all kinds of time and energy looking at the possibility of developing the port of Churchill more, putting more into it, so that from time to time elements like, hold your breath on this one, liquid natural gas, possibly other fossil fuel elements could flow out of there, because provinces like Quebec, British Columbia to a degree, won't allow clean liquid natural gas, well refined, from Canada going to places around the world to reduce emissions overall. So they're looking at Churchill. For those of you who may not be aware, Churchill is what they call the frozen north for a reason. It is locked in ice for 8 months of the year. Really, is that where Canada should be spending their time and their money in terms of looking at their resources moving out of there? So folks, these are all items that people are looking at today, debating today, and closing on we're talking about the environment. on an incredible story that took place just yesterday in Chicago, of all places. For 100 years, the river that flows through Chicago has been so filthy, so polluted, that nobody could even swim in it. That's how bad it was. And through human effort and good science and good mitigation, that river has now been cleaned up to the point that for the first time in 100 years, people were swimming in the waters of Chicago. Great breakthrough. It shows there's hope, folks. Stay tuned tomorrow. Thank you.